Hello everyone, welcome back to Rachel's Studio. We're going to learn a fun, fast, easy, even meditative way to paint water. Can't get it wrong. And for those of you who are new, my name is Rachel Parker Varner, and I focus on teaching my dreamy yet realistic, impressionistic but realistic painting style. I do have a Patreon and a Facebook group and all that good stuff, but I'm going to wait till the end to tell you about that if you're interested. But for now, let's go ahead and jump right on into this tutorial. Here we go. Also, I want to thank Philip Thurston for this beautiful reference photo. I actually paid for it on iStock. I never do that, but I just wanted the perfect image for this tutorial I did for my Patreon students. And here I am going to paint some water. So what you see me doing is painting clear water where I want my paint to flow. I'm using my 3/4 oval, painting carefully around my turtle. And then I shake the water to the upper left quadrant of the painting to give it movement. What I want you to notice here is that I'm using paint straight from the tube. There is water in my brush to activate the paint a little bit, but I want to use pretty thick paint because one, I'm dropping it onto very wet paper, which dilutes it. And then later you'll see me spray and that dilutes it even more. So we want pretty thick paint to ensure that we get good, rich color for our water. This is called a charging technique where you get the paper wet and you charge the paint onto the paper. And as you can see, it just kind of blooms out naturally because I have this almost puddling wet. It's almost puddling, very close to puddling. You don't usually want puddles at all, hardly ever, because then your paint will pool in the deeper parts of the puddle and just bloom out into a blob and not look like anything. However, we are going to do a lot of tilting and dripping, so we want a more watery surface to work with than we usually do. Notice, another thing I do want you to notice though is that I'm using analogous colors, which means I'm using colors that are kind of close to each other. On the color wheel, blue is next to green, is next to yellow, so they don't make mud when they blend together. And here I'm picking up cream consistency ultramarine blue paint. And by the way, if you don't know what I mean by milk, cream, tea consistency paint on glistening, buckling, or dry paper, be sure to watch my watercolor clock video. When I learned the concept I talked about in that video, it changed my painting forever. So that's a must watch video. I will put the link in the upper right corner. And when you click on it, it won't take you out of this video. It will just queue it up for you to watch next or later. All right, so as I go, I use thicker and thicker paint, and as the paper dries, my edges get harder and harder, but they still stay soft because I am painting on damp paper. And it's okay because if you want to loosen those up and make them look more watery, we will spray those, which you'll see in a minute. So my marks are looking very square. Don't worry, we're going to spray them. And you can spray more than I did and loosen them up even more than I did, which again, you'll see that in a minute. So I tilt it up and let it drip off my board. Sometimes I slam it to really get some motion in the water. You can also spin with your whole painting. Your neighbors will think you're nuts if you do it outside like I do. And then I spray more. I get a really pretty sparkly effect, by the way, with this spray because it leaves little bits of dry paper. But I get it really nice and drippy so it really looks watery. And then I just use gravity to help me paint this painting. Water, gravity, and paint do most of the work here, and it just makes it such a fun way to paint water. Letting it drip off in a diagonal direction to give it more motion. And then I blot up whatever drip off my painting so it doesn't run back into the painting when I put it down. And then as long as your paper is wet, you can continue to add paint. All right, next I'm using my 3/4 oval. I'm using a lot of water here. I want my paint to be a little bit lighter here because this is not as an important area as near the head where I just was. So I'm adding even more drippy water. Doesn't matter if it's drippy, which is usually not the rule, right? You usually don't want any drips on your paper when you're using the charging technique. But here we're going to let it drip. So I'm getting it really drippy everywhere where I want the paint to flow. Plenty of water. By the way, this is Stonehenge hot press. And then I shake my painting in the way that I want the water to flow off to the side to create motion. Then I'm going to get some permanent green light color, getting plenty of pigment in my brush, not too much water mixed in because it's going to really get diluted when I paint it onto this wet paper. This is the charging method, painting paint into wet paper. Again, using analogous colors, some blues and some greens next to each other. Then I tilt and give pretty forceful shakes so that the paint runs, and then spray the bottom of the paint pool to make it run even more and look really natural and organic. You cannot get paint to look this natural and organic using brush strokes. But isn't it cool? We're just letting water and gravity paint this water for us. Adding some sky blue color. A similar color would be Holbein Peacock Blue, which is a gorgeous electric blue color. And it really will add some life into your water. Permanent green lights, another good color. Windsor green gold's another good color. So we can spray, we can tilt, we can blot, and then we can add more paint till our heart's content. And the more water you have added to your paint, the lighter it will be. So on the margins, I'm letting it get really dilute, splatting some paint drops into some of the areas, and then shaking it to get it to run even more until I'm happy with the general feel for it. I do like to leave a lot of sparkles of white paper to give it some sparkle, almost like there's light filtering through the water. It just makes it look really sparkly to make sure you leave some dry white areas of the paper. So don't overspray. Then of course, blot as needed. And on the edges again, I spray quite a bit to make it a lot lighter on the edges of where I was just working to blend it. And then if you see that it looks a little too faded out, remember as it dries, it will lighten up again. It will lighten up quite a bit. You can continue to drop in more pigment until it's dark enough for you. And then if your brush strokes show too much for you, you can just spray it and they'll blob out into a more watery look. All right, I'm going to do the final corner. I'm going to basically use the same exact techniques. I'm getting just the corner really watery, drippy in fact, so that when I tilt my board, the water will run and then I can charge the paint into my puddle that is already shaped like how water naturally acts, runny and drippy with motion in it. So I'm letting my water drip. Then I'm going to add paint to the very corner here I'm working on. I think I go off camera here, but I'm going to put thick paint right in the corner. My paint is dry there on my palette. I recommend you use paint straight from the tube and get it cream consistency with just maybe a little water added. And then I'm painting it into my corner and making sure that as it runs and drips, I've got the board tilted in the way that I want it to run diagonally across the painting to give it even more motion. If I made it run straight across the painting, parallel to one of the sides, it would not have as much dynamic movement. I want it diagonal. In fact, almost making an X diagonal um, across the turtle that's going the other diagonal direction. And that creates really nice movement and contrast. So spraying a lot where I want it to be softer, lighter, and bloomier. And if it drips across your turtle, no big deal. As long as it's wet, you can just blot it right back up. It might stain it a tiny little bit, but not much. And then it'll just look like a ray of water or light coming across your turtle, or whatever else it is you're painting for an underwater scene. And just blotting. And then I decide I want my corner. I usually want my corners dark. And then as you progress into the painting, it gets lighter to kind of create a vignette look, to kind of frame in the painting, frame in the subject. So the corner is the darkest, and as it goes in towards the inside of the painting, it gets lighter. So you can keep adding paint to your corner to make it darker in the corner with cream consistency paint. Putting some more permanent green light color in there. Letting it run. Spraying, repeat until you're happy with how it looks. This would be a really fun way to paint an abstract too, y'all. Can you think of other subjects that you could use this technique for? Leave a comment. And remember to like this video if you're enjoying what I'm teaching. And be sure to follow me to learn not just the how, but the why of watercolor, so you move along your painting journey a lot faster. You can join my Patreon to watch this and about 200 other tutorials from start to finish in real time, sometimes in slowed down time. And you can also follow me for free on Patreon to stay in touch with me. You can join my Facebook group for free, where we have a great community. And you can post your paintings and get to know me and my community members. And I hope you will do that. We have a great time over there, and I learn a lot from them. In fact, I just learned about pastel mat from my member, Roberta Dottie, and I made a video about painting on pastel mat last week. It's a fun experimental paper to try out if you want to try something different. The best way to change your style in watercolor is to paint on a new paper. Just look at Ali Kavanaugh's paintings where she has started painting on clayboard, and it's totally revolutionized her whole art career. It's blown her up. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial. Like I said, leave me a comment. I love reading my comments and responding to them. Come join me on my Facebook group. Come join me and follow me for free on Patreon. I post a lot of good content over there, even for my free members often. Check out my community tab. Look down in my description for links to my favorite art supplies and some more free real-time start to finish tutorials. I've got lots of good stuff in my description, so be sure to check that out. I do sell my prints and originals on rachelstudio.com. I also have an Etsy shop, and I've started hosting a few workshops in my own studio now. So be sure to sign up as a free member on rachelstudio.com to stay in touch with things that are going on in my art life, and to stay in touch with me if Facebook goes away or Patreon goes away or whatever. You can stay in touch with me through my mailing list by joining as a member for free on rachelstudio.com. And I hope to see you online. And until next time, go watercolor your world. Bye, everybody.